No one online ever tells you how to actually stop bulking. They're all just like, eat a calorie surplus, see ya. But I'm not going to do that to you. So in this video, as our fourth and final part of our lean bulking series, we'll cover the most important mistakes to avoid, what to do if you hit a plateau in your bulk, how to know if you've been bulking for long enough, and of course, how to transition out of your bulk the right way with results that you're actually happy with. If your goal is to build muscle while minimizing fat gain, I'm going to assume that you already know the most common mistakes, specifically not eating the right calories, macros, or just doing a dirty bulk. But if you're unsure of any of these, I'd recommend at least going back and watching the first video in this series to get yourself up to speed. Mistake number one is probably the most obvious mistake, but for the majority of people, starting a lean bulk doesn't require as many extra calories as you might think. Typically, to gain around 1% to 2% of your body weight per week, you'd need to be in a calorie surplus of around 200 to 300 calories. And that basically just means eating like you usually would to maintain your weight, and then adding in a protein bar or something like that. Eating far above your maintenance calories might seem like the fastest way to build muscle, but after a certain point, most of that excess is going to turn to fat. Instead, it's usually better to stick to a smaller controlled surplus like we talked about in the first video. Monitor your progress weekly and aim to gain about 0.5 to 1 pound per week. This is going to help you maximize muscle gain while minimizing fat gain. The next mistake people don't always think about is neglecting nutrition quality. Relying purely on junk foods or highly processed foods to get you through your bulk can lead to poor energy levels, worse performance in the gym, digestive issues, and I promise you, just after a few days of eating so much highly processed food, you're going to be feeling the negative side effects. People will argue that a calorie is a calorie, and as long as you get the calories in on your bulk, then that's fine. But the quality of the food really does matter, because if you're feeling fatigued from the food that you're eating and you don't have the energy to push hard in your workouts, then you're not going to be creating that stimulus to build muscle, and that's obviously the whole point of why we're bulking in the first place. So at least 80% of the time, you want to be prioritizing nutrient-dense foods, so things like lean meats, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and healthy fats to help fuel your workouts and your recovery. The next mistake is kind of a sneaky one that sort of just creeps up on you, but it's not using progressive overload. Bulking is only really effective when you're consistently building muscle, at least for the most part. And to do that, we need to be constantly challenging our body so that it has a reason to grow. I don't know about you, but sometimes I can just find myself going to the gym just because it's a habit and just sort of going through the motions rather than pushing myself in each session. Tracking the reps and the weights you lift each week should help you consciously focus on progressing over time. The next mistake is one that I am definitely guilty of, and that's skipping cardio completely. Yeah, although bulking is about gaining and you want to minimize the amount of excess calories that you're burning, because otherwise you'll just have to eat more food, cutting out cardio completely can lead to a lack of endurance and can be quite damaging for your cardiovascular health. So really, you want to include some light cardio in your routine at least a couple of times a week to keep your heart healthy and minimize the impact it's going to have on your recovery. It doesn't have to be a lot either. What this looks like for me is getting in my 10,000 steps every single day, like without fail. I don't increase this anymore on rest days either. I literally just do 10,000 steps every day. And then before my workouts, I'll do 5 minutes on the elliptical, mainly as a warm-up. But when I'm doing that 5-minute warm-up, I'm obviously getting my heart rate up. It does count as a form of cardio. And yeah, that is all I do. Ultimately, muscle gain is a slow process, so you need to be ready to spend months in a bulking phase. I've been bulking this entire year, and even if you look like at my before and afters, I'm not done yet, but my before and now, there's not that much difference. There is a huge amount of muscle gain, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing like crazy. So you need to remember, if you find yourself like a month in thinking that you haven't made much progress, it's going to take time. But sometimes after a few weeks, if you've not seen any progress, it can really feel like you've just hit a brick wall in your bulk. So what do you actually do if you hit a plateau? There's sort of two parts to this. The first one I didn't realize I had to do when I was a few months into my bulk, because I'd done what everyone online had told me. I was in a calorie surplus, but I just wasn't seeing progress anymore. It was such a frustrating time, and I was starting to think that bulking didn't actually work at all. But then I found out about this thing called metabolic adaptation. And essentially, as you gain more muscle on your bulk, your body and your metabolism is going to adapt to allow you to maintain your weight while eating more food. And that's partly because muscle tissue burns more calories than other tissues, but all that to say, as you get further into your bulk, you're going to have to increase your calories. I know, if you're someone like me who naturally has a small appetite and finds it hard to get the food in anyway, this can be really annoying to hear. But if your weight gain stalled for about 2 or 3 weeks, then it's pretty likely that your body's adjusted to the calories that you're eating. So what I'd recommend is increase your daily calorie intake intake by 100 to 200 calories and monitor your weight again. And yes, your macros are going to change with this calorie increase, so you need to go back to the first video of the series and recalculate everything so that you've got the right macros. And you're going to have to do this each time you increase the calories throughout your entire bulking phase. If you find all that quite overwhelming, or honestly just a bit of a faff, I completely relate, which is why I created my training and nutrition app, where you can input your progress over the weeks and it will automatically adjust your calories, your macros, and your training plan so that you're not going to hit a plateau in your bulk. Your plan's completely tailored to you, your likes, your dislikes, your starting point, your specific goals, so if you want to give it a go, then you can sign up for the free 2-week trial in the description. However, if you've plateaued in the gym, you might want to check your training intensity. A plateau might be due to stagnation in your training, and a lot of the time this happens when we just get too comfortable and we're going through the motions. So this is the perfect time to ask yourself, when was the last time you lifted heavier? When was the last time you increased the reps? If you find that you've kind of hit a brick wall in terms of progressive overload, try changing up your rep ranges, introduce different exercises to sort of switch things up a bit and challenge your muscles in a different way. For some people, hitting a plateau might also just be your body's way of telling you that it needs a bit of a break. So one technique you can use is something called a deload week. When I do this in my training, basically all I do is cut the intensity of my sessions in half. So I won't push until failure, I'll use about half of the weight that I usually lift, and it's going to be a heck of an easy week of workouts. But that's the whole point. Because over that deload week, your body's going to have a bit more of a chance to recover properly, so when you go back the week after and lift the weight that you were lifting before, you're likely going to be a lot stronger. So that's another really great tactic you can add to your toolkit to get yourself out of a plateau. A couple of other things you need to consider when you're trying to get out of a plateau is your general recovery. So are you staying hydrated? Are you getting enough quality sleep? Ideally between 7 to 9 hours. Are you managing your stress levels? Because this is all going to impact how well you're recovering from your workouts. You also need to make sure that you're tracking more than just your scale weight as a marker of your progress. Only looking at how your body weight's increasing as a measure of your progress isn't really what you want to be doing when you bulk, because our weights fluctuate so much. I mean, think about it. Even during the course of one day, you're going to be lighter first thing when you wake up in the morning than you are when you go to bed with like 4 or 5 meals in you. Or even if you weigh yourself in the morning one day and you've already been to the bathroom, that weight could be different from exactly the same day if you hadn't been to the bathroom. Is this getting too much detail? Plateaus on the scale don't always mean a lack of progress. You also need to consider your strength gains, your muscle definition, or measurement increases. The way I track my progress in my own training is every week I'll measure my weight, my waist measurement, thigh measurement, and glutes measurement. Depending on which muscle groups you really want to focus on, those are the ones that you should be measuring. And then I also take progress photos every week. If you want to be more accurate with the weight side of things, you can take your weight measurement like 3 times a week and then get an average for the end of the week. But honestly, at the end of the day, your weight is just a number, and if your goals are more physique focused, then your weight really doesn't matter. But how do you actually know if you've been bulking for long enough? There's a few different approaches we can take to this depending on how you went into your bulk. So if you set a target weight or body size when you started bulking, you know that you finished your bulk when you hit that target. Pretty self-explanatory. But personally, I don't like this approach because going off your weight alone doesn't tell you anything about the amount of muscle you've gained, about the amount of fat you've gained. And yes, you can get those scales that measure your body fat percentage, but 99% of the time, at least out of the technology that I've seen, they're pretty inaccurate. Instead, I prefer to combine the next two methods. The first one is a body composition assessment. If your fat gain started to outpace your muscle gain, then it might be time to stop bulking. Look at your physique and decide if you're happy with the ratio of muscle to fat. You might start feeling overly fluffy, and this point will be different for different people, so you really need to decide for yourself if you're happy with where your body composition's at. If you're not sure, then don't worry, because I'll cover some methods you can use when we talk about transitioning out of your bulk. The next indicator that you've probably been bulking enough, or you might just need a break, is mental or physical burnout. Feeling constantly bloated or unmotivated to stick to your calorie surplus can be a sign that it's time to transition out of your bulking phase. Bulking should feel productive, not exhausting, and what can help with this is setting yourself a timeline when you first start your bulk. Most bulking phases last between 3 to 6 months, so if you've been bulking for a bit longer, then your body might just need a bit of time to reset before you move on to the next phase. Now those 3 to 6 months aren't set in stone. Like I said earlier, I've been bulking for this entire year, so it really depends on the person and also on how fast you're actually gaining weight. Because at the end of the day, if you're still happy with the rate of progress that you're seeing and you're like a year into your bulk, then you don't have to stop. You can keep going until you feel like you've reached that end point. But when you do reach that end point, you need to be smart about what you do next. As much as the gym bros like to romanticize it, we are not going to be bulking forever. It's called a bulking phase for a reason, and there's a couple of routes you can go down at the end of your bulk depending on your goals or your current physique. If you weren't sure whether you should stop bulking or not, but you're starting to feel a little bit fluffy, then you can also use this approach to help you lose that small excess layer of fat and then decide whether you want to keep bulking or you're happy with the amount of muscle that you've built. Step 1 is gradually reduce your calories. Promise me, do not abruptly cut your calories. Instead, decrease your calories by about 100 to 150 every week, because this is going to give your metabolism more time to adapt and it's going to help you retain the most amount of muscle possible. Just like you did when you were increasing the calories during your bulking phase, now you're also going to have to recalculate all of your macros when you decrease your calories during this transition phase. Now just a note on this, protein is crucial for preserving muscle mass, so as you're decreasing your calories, you want to make sure that your protein is always within the range of 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. In terms of training, during this transition phase, you need to keep lifting heavy. You can't be slacking off now, because this is what's going to tell your body that it needs to maintain its muscle that it's built. You also want to avoid drastically increasing cardio straight away, because that's going to put more stress on your body and it's going to make it a lot harder for it to recover. Next, we want to introduce a maintenance phase. So over the weeks, you will have been decreasing your calories. When you hit the number where your weight remains the same from week to week, that is your new maintenance. It's likely not going to be the same as your maintenance was at the start of your bulk, because your metabolism will have adapted. Before moving on to the next phase, I want you to spend at least 4 to 6 weeks of maintenance, because this is going to help your body stabilize and sort of get used to your new body composition and hang on to the muscle that you've built. The next phase is actually optional, because if you've done the lean bulking approach, then it's very likely that you might not need to cut at the end of it. But if you do feel like you're a little bit fluffy, you've got a little bit of excess fat that you want to get rid of, now you're going to go into a cutting phase. To do this, you're going to go into a small calorie deficit of around 200 to 400 calories. You really want to take this fat loss phase slowly, because drastically decreasing your calories all at once is going to put unnecessary stress on your body, and it's much more likely to start eating away at the muscle that you've worked so hard to build. So after the first couple of weeks of that initial decrease into your calorie deficit, make sure you're monitoring your weight and your body composition. Then if you feel like your fat loss is going too slowly, you can decrease the calories a bit more. If you're happy with the rate of fat loss, then just keep it the same until your body composition reaches the point where you're happy with it. When you're happy with the body composition that you've reached, congratulations, you've completed your whole bulking and cutting phase. So after that, you're going to increase your calories back up to maintenance and set some new goals for yourself. It could be strength goals, it could be muscle goals, or you could try something completely different. So now with these 4 videos, you have everything you need to know to complete your entire bulking phase with confidence. I do have a complete bulking guide that compiles everything that we've covered in all 4 of these videos, along with some additional resources. So I'll link that below, along with the free trial of my app if you just want to take all of the guesswork completely out of your bulking phase, and I can create a plan completely for you. Although if there's a certain muscle group that you want to focus on bringing up throughout your bulking phase, then you need to watch this playlist next, because we go through all of the different muscle groups, breaking down exactly how you should train them to get the most growth. I really appreciate you. Comment what topics you want me to cover in future videos, and I'll see you over there next.